When
You're
you
so
shoot,
hot with all of your leading men.
I think that there's a thing, I make jokes about it, but I call it the cinema gods, and they mess with us. You want to slip the first day of work somewhere in the middle of the movie so that nobody can tell that you're getting your feet wet, you know?
For decades, Hollywood tried to write her story for her. They called her elegant, untouchable. But behind every headline was a woman battling the kind of wounds no camera could ever capture. At just 14, she escaped a life that was decided for her. At 20, she became the face of on-screen desire. At 60, she's finally telling us which of Hollywood's leading men she secretly wanted and why she stayed silent for years. But here's the question: was she protecting her image or protecting their reputations? And what if the truth behind those rumors is far more shocking than any love scene she ever filmed? Let's find out. Body from chaos to camera. Diane Lane has always handled herself with a refined manner that is unassuming. As a result of her attractiveness, talent, and charisma, she has become one of the most adored actresses in Hollywood. On the other hand, Diane's early years were anything from glamorous. Despite the blazing lights and red carpets that surrounded her, her narrative is not solely about gaining celebrity. Survival, resiliency, and the search for love and stability in a world that felt everything but secure are the themes that are explored in this story. Diane Colleen Lane was born in New York City on January 22, 1965. Her birthday is January 22nd. Colleen Farrington, her mother, was a lovely nightclub singer and Playboy centerfold model. She was also pregnant with her daughter. In addition to being a cab driver, her father, Burton Lane, was a well-respected theater coach. It appeared as though Diane was destined for a career in the entertainment industry, given the presence of parents such as these. A mother who was a well-known model and a father who was interested in the arts gave the impression that the family was quite glamorous from the outside. Behind closed doors, however, things were not even close to being perfect. Although they enjoyed a passionate relationship, it was fraught with difficulties. Ambition, love, and disagreements were continually at odds with one another. By the time Diane was a young child, the couple's marriage had already begun to disintegrate. In addition, Diane's entire youth would be altered as a result of this divorce. Diane's custody issue became a contentious issue after the divorce. The fact that her father, Burton, was awarded custody of her was a rare occurrence at the time. However, while being under his care, life was lacking consistency. The arts were something that Burton was deeply enthusiastic about, yet he had a hard time making ends meet. The room that Diane lived in was located above a theater in New York City, where her father taught acting classes. Diane spent her childhood in a small flat in the city. Neither did she have a childhood in which she played in a backyard, or in which her family lived in a warm and inviting home. In its place, she found herself surrounded by actors, screenplays, and the unpredictability of her father's professional life. Diane had a deep affection for her father, despite the volatility. He served as her pillar of support and was the one who first exposed her to the world of performing. With that being said, there was always a portion of her that yearned for a family life that was more conventional. On the other side, her mother had relocated to Georgia in order to follow her own personal goals and pursuits. Diane would come and go from her life, and for a considerable amount of time, she was divided between the two worlds, the one in which her father lived, which was a difficult but loving environment, and the other in which her mother lived, which was a remote but glamorous one. At the age of 13, Diane experienced the most shocking event of her life. Her mother abducted her and brought her to Georgia, where she continued to live apart from her father. During the middle of the night, this was not a particularly miraculous escape. Simply put, her mother made the decision that it was time for Diane to move in with herself. As Diane, who was both perplexed and terrified, discovered that she was in a totally different way, but she was not the type of person to take a back seat and allow life to dictate her. She took a courageous step and decided to leave Georgia rather than remain there. On her trip back to New York, she escaped. Diane Lane, who was only 14 years old at the time, was living in the city by herself and doing everything on her own. What if the strength that made her a Hollywood icon was forged in the moment she escaped as a terrified 14-year-old? And how did that night rewrite everything she believed about love?
How her early wounds shaped love. Diane was shaped by the fact that she did not have a stable upbringing. At a young age, she had realized that love and trust were two distinct concepts that meant different things. However, love was not always dependable. Individuals may leave, and trust could be betrayed. Despite the fact that they loved her greatly, her parents had their own hopes, challenges, and disagreements. Consequently, Diane was required to improve herself in a variety of ways. At a time when the majority of children were still playing with toys, she was able to develop her independence. The way she viewed relationships was profoundly altered as a result of this. She developed a tremendous sense of independence. She has no intention of ever becoming emotionally or financially dependent on another person. Her inability to trust love was a problem. After witnessing the dissolution of her parents' marriage and then being taken away from her father by her mother, she began to question the stability of love. She acquired the ability to adjust. She learned how to adapt to any situation by traversing a variety of environments, including other cities, different households, and different ways of living. A skill that would later prove to be beneficial to her in the entertainment industry. However, it also made her want for a profound and genuine love. Diane did not wish to make the same mistakes that her parents had made. What she desired was a love that was powerful, long-lasting, and genuine. This urge, on the other hand, would eventually lead her into some of the most convoluted and notorious relationships in Hollywood. These childhood wounds remained with Diane when she grew older and entered the entertainment world. She has carried them with her ever since. At the same time, she yearned for safety and connection. But in addition to that, she had a profound dread of being injured or abandoned. It was later that this emotional conflict would manifest itself in her personal life, which would ultimately result in the scandalous affairs and dramatic love stories that would be featured in the media. First things first, before we get into those bombshell disclosures, let's take a look at how Diane's career rose and how Hollywood's preoccupation with her personal life began. The ascent to acclaim of Diane Lane. The journey that Diane Lane took from having a difficult upbringing to becoming a famous actress in Hollywood is nothing short of astounding. She was not only another gorgeous face who was attempting to rise through the ranks of the profession. She had been through a lot of grief and hardship in her life, but she never allowed it to define who she was. She was a force of nature like no other. At the time that Diane was a teenager, she had already experienced more life than the majority of people who were twice her age. Her own mother had abducted her. She had lived by herself in New York City, and she had to navigate a world that frequently regarded her like an adult long before she was ready to be treated like anything else. On the other hand, she chose to use those challenges as fuel rather than allowing them to break her. Notice was taken by Hollywood, and in a short amount of time, the entire globe would fall in love with Diane Lane. It was impossible for Hollywood to ignore the talented young actress. It was not an accident that Diane began her career in acting. Rather, it was fate. Because her father worked as a drama instructor in New York, she was exposed to the world of theater from the time she was a child. Storytelling and the ability of actors to bring a range of emotions to life have always had a strong fascination for her. Even at a young age, when Diane was just 6 years old, she began her career as an actress in several theater shows. From the time she was a young child, she possessed a natural talent and a personality that demanded attention. When she was in her early teens, it became very evident that she was not only a child mindlessly pretending to be someone else. In addition to being an actor, she was a pretty fine one. At the age of 13, she was cast in a role that would prove to be her big break. Can someone raised in emotional instability ever truly believe in forever? Or was every romance Diane entered already doomed by her past? A Little Romance, 1979. In a romantic drama,
she appeared with Laurence Olivier as a leading actress. Imagine going to work with one of the most talented performers in the history of the world when you were just a teenager. But Diane was not afraid. Rather, she shone brightly. The critics were completely taken aback. Who exactly was this young girl who possessed such elegance, sincerity, and presence on screen? They were referring to her as the next great thing, and directors from Hollywood were lining up to collaborate with her. There was a period of time when it appeared that Diane Lane was unstoppable, but Hollywood is never that straightforward. The breakthrough roles that catapulted her career to new heights. The success of Diane's novel A Little Romance was the catalyst for her career to take off. Throughout the decade of the 1980s, she starred in a number of significant films, which helped her establish herself as one of the most sought-after young actresses in the industry. Among her most notable early roles was her performance in The Outsiders in 1983. This picture, which was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, went on to become a phenomenon in popular culture. Tom Cruise, Patrick Swayze, and Matt Dillon were among the young, handsome men that appeared alongside Diane in the film. She played the role of Cherry Valance, a girl who was too good for the bad boys, but too intrigued to stay away from either of them. 1983's Rumblefish, another film directed by Coppola. This one was more artistic and had a darker tone. Diane was commended for her performance, which demonstrated that she was more than just a young movie actor. She has significant depth. The 1984 film Streets of Fire. The fact that Diane was able to portray a fierce female lead in this action-packed rock musical helped to further solidify her status as a star. Diane Lane was there in every single place at this point. The ideal leading lady for Hollywood, she was young, talented, and stunning all at the same time. However, after that, an unexpected occurrence took place. Her burgeoning career was hampered by a few films that struggled at the box office. Films such as The Cotton Club, 1984, and Lady Beware, 1987, did not perform well at the box office, and immediately after that, Hollywood began to turn its back on her. Diane had a difficult time for a moment, from being seen as the golden girl of the profession to being regarded as simply another actress who had lost her momentum. She had gone through dramatic changes. However, Diane Lane was not going to vanish anytime soon. She took a step back, reevaluated her situation, and then returned more powerful than she had been before. Diane Lane had completely reimagined herself by the time the 1990s and early 2000s dawned. In the 1980s, she was a young woman with a fresh face, but she was no longer that. She had developed into a lady who was crystal clear on both who she was and what she desired all along. It was as if Hollywood fell in love with her completely once more. It was in the film A Walk on the Moon, 1999, that she made her major comeback. In the film, she played the role of a housewife who was involved in an affair during the summer of Woodstock. Diane's performance was absolutely stunning, and the movie was a dramatic, sensuous, and emotional experience. After then, the role that would forever alter everything, Unfaithful 2002, came along. This film is the one that established Diane Lane as a legendary figure. She portrayed a lady who was split between feelings of guilt and desire. In the film Unfaithful, she was caught up in an intense extramarital affair. That she was nominated for an Academy Award was due to the fact that her performance was so unfiltered, so heartfelt, and so genuine. Her performance was hailed as one of the best of the decade by critical assessments. Her devoted followers simply could not get enough of her. And once more, Diane Lane was at the pinnacle of the Hollywood power structure. On the other hand, fame implies scrutiny. A single question was posed by both the industry and the media. How is it that Diane Lane is able to make her roles feel so authentic? There must be something going on in her private life that she is keeping from us, right? Beginning to circulate were the rumors. Did Diane's on-screen intensity represent the way she actually felt about things in real life? Is she really as innocent as she appeared to be? Is it possible that her romantic life had a more sinister side? It seemed as though the world was suddenly interested in more than simply the actress Diane Lane. They had a desire to learn more about the woman named Diane Lane, her personal life, her relationships, and her affairs are all secrets. All of it was Hollywood's desire. Not long after that, the controversies started. To what extent did Diane Lane's status as the sweetheart of the United States of America remain true? Alternatively, was there a different side to her? One that the general public was never supposed to reveal? When Hollywood turned its back, Diane Lane was more than simply a phenomenal actress in Hollywood. One of its most sought-after women, she was as well. Audiences and other actors were enchanted by her timeless beauty, natural charisma, and indisputable talent. Not only did Diane's talents garner attention the instant she entered the spotlight, but so did her private life. No matter where she went, the media was there, waiting to report on her rumored relationships, broken heart, and exes. There were passionate partnerships, some that ended in heartbreak, and others that were tender and lovely. Love in Hollywood is complicated, Diane realized through it all. Diane had her first taste of Hollywood romance when she was quite young. She grew up in the entertainment industry, where she was surrounded by handsome, driven guys who shared her ambitions. The French-American actor Christopher Lambert, who rose to fame in the film Highlander, was one of her earliest public partnerships. They hit it off the moment they crossed paths in the 1980s. Theirs was hardly a long-term love tale, but rather a passionate fling. As their jobs diverged, they gradually drifted apart, but destiny had other intentions for them in the long run. Diane was in relationships with a number of Hollywood A-listers, including those who were at the height of their careers. Timothy Hutton's relationship was one of the most talked about because of his reputation as an unpredictable charmer and Oscar-winning actor. Due to their hectic schedules and the demands of fame, their passionate romance did not last long. There were whispers of secret relationships and flings with A-list Hollywood celebs as well. The tabloids went ballistic over the possibility that Diane was involved in scandalous affairs because of her innate grace and elegance. Regardless of the veracity or hyperbole of the rumors, Diane became one of Hollywood's most talked-about ladies. Fame, desire, and danger inside her most explosive relationships. For Diane, her marriage to Christopher Lambert was a pivotal partnership. They reconnected after a decade apart, despite having dated briefly in the 1980s. It seemed fated when they crossed paths again. Eleanor was born to them after they tied the knot in 1988. Diane appeared to have found the love of her life for a time. It would appear that her life was steady. She had a family and a successful job. However, weddings in Hollywood are not always easy. Their romance suffered as a result of the stress of being famous, rigorous filming schedules, and relentless scrutiny. Diane and Christopher didn't have an easy time staying married, despite how much they loved each other. Following a 6-year marriage, they divorced in 1994. Both Diane and her daughter were deeply affected by the breakup, which made the loss of love all the more painful. Since she herself lacked a solid family life as a child, she had always wished to provide Eleanor with one. Divorce made me feel like I had failed as an individual. In many ways, Diane was transformed by this grief. Concerning her romantic connections, she became increasingly reserved and secretive. She was still a romantic at heart, but she was warier of letting just anyone into her inner circle. The cost of stardom. Did Hollywood dictate how she interacted with others? Diane frequently had to pay the personal price for being a successful Hollywood actress. There has long been a system in place within the entertainment industry to manipulate the romantic lives of its stars. Dates, marriages, and public appearances with actors and actresses were frequently determined by publicists, studios, and even movie contracts. Because it didn't align with the studio's perception of them, many celebrities were coerced into partnerships for the sake of publicity, or kept apart from those they loved deeply. It was the same for Diane, who was among the most adored actresses of her time. People were always looking at her romantic relationships. Her every public appearance with a man made news. There was a scandal around every split. She frequently portrayed herself as the innocent beauty, entangled in sad romances, as the media sought to craft a narrative around her love life. It was hard for her to maintain a regular relationship because of all the attention she was getting. She had moments when she doubted the reliability of those around her. Was the reason someone was seeing her more a desire for attention than any real affection? It got so bad that Diane even stopped dating famous people for a while. Rather of pursuing love the way Hollywood expected, she prioritized her job, her kid, and her happiness. Be that as it may, love has a peculiar knack for surprising those who least anticipate it. Diane rediscovered love in the early 2000s after a long period of concentrating on her daughter and herself. This time, Josh Brolin was the actor. Josh has an extraordinary blend of natural talent, magnetic personality, and toughness. After a long and intense courtship, they tied the knot in 2004. It appeared for a while that Diane had finally discovered the love she had been seeking. But they did have some problems as a married couple. Both Josh and their relationship were plagued by his turbulent history. After being together for almost 10 years, they announced their divorce in 2013. Diane was devastated again, but she dealt with it differently this time. Moving on with poise and resilience, she refused to let the anguish define her. Hollywood was shocked by the scandalous affairs. The romance between Lane and actor Christopher Lambert was public knowledge. In 1984, while both were promoting their movie, the two met and hit it off immediately. Eleanor was born to them in 1993 after they tied the knot in 1988. But there were problems in the marriage, and they split up in 1994 and eventually divorced in 1995. Actor Josh Brolin became Lane's boyfriend after her divorce from Lambert. They tied the knot in 2004, but their marriage was dogged by scandals. Notably, after Lane reported Brolin to the police for allegedly hitting her in December 2004, he was detained at their residence and charged with spousal violence. Lane declined to seek charges, stating that the event was a misunderstanding, and Brolin posted bond. They split in 2013 after trying to get back together. There were whispers of an off-screen affair between Diane Lane and Richard Gere after their chemistry in 2002's Unfaithful, but the two had been friends since 1984's The Cotton Club. Their regard for one another had grown into a strong professional relationship by the time they met again. The explosive on-screen tension between them was clearly acting, not based on any real-life romance, as Lane made it very apparent. Many of the rumors that have circulated about Lane's interactions with prominent persons beyond her marriages have yet to be confirmed. Rumor has it that she dated actor Emilio Estevez and Timothy Hutton in the early 1980s. There were even rumors of a hookup with rock star John Bon Jovi in the 1980s. The media has spread many rumors about Lane's personal life, and he has not addressed them publicly. Matthew McConaughey confessed his lifelong passion for Lane while filming Serenity, 2019. Their partnership took a light-hearted turn with this amusing admission, but Lane made it clear that their connection was all business. But that didn't take away from the compelling tension they exhibited on film. Rumors of an off-screen romance circulated after Robert Duvall and Lane gave such genuine performances in 1989's Lonesome Dove. The performances were even more captivating since, as Lane stressed, their bond was founded on professionalism and a common commitment to narrative. A memorable yet fleeting affair occurred between Christopher Atkins and Lane during 1983's The Outsiders. Despite its brief duration, Lane remembers it with fondness as a formative experience during her early years in Hollywood. A short, real-world romance blossomed between Lane and Matt Dillon, whose chemistry in The Outsiders carried over into real life. Despite its transient nature, the two maintained cordial relations. Looking back, Lane considers it a memorable aspect of her time in Hollywood. Instead of Sylvester Stallone, Lane allegedly had an affair with director Danny Cannon while filming Judge Dredd in 1995. A lot of people would think that Lane and Stallone hit it off, but that's not really the case. It was Danny Cannon, the film's director, who first attracted Lane's interest. Lane and Cannon became romantically involved for a short time during filming. They were quiet, and their relationship remained primarily under the radar, unlike several high-profile Hollywood romances. However, many who worked on the project did observe their growing affinity. Their romance was short-lived, but they kept in touch and even appeared together at some public occasions following the film's release, so they were still on good terms. Next up, we have Nicolas Cage and Lane. While filming The Family Man, 2000, they reconnected after meeting for the first time on Rumblefish, 1984. They kept their romance under wraps, but it did turn romantic for a while. They were still very much in love with one another after they broke up. Were the sparks we saw on screen just acting, or was Hollywood covering up secrets too explosive to reveal? And why did Diane never deny them? Living under media surveillance. While tabloids have been quick to report on any information they can get their hands on regarding Lane's personal life, including her romances, this fascination has occasionally resulted in misunderstandings and embellished tales. One, for example, despite Lane's best attempts to play down the incident, the arrest of Brolin received extensive media attention, which had a negative impact on their marriage. The public may be captivated by Lane, but she has always preferred to keep her personal life out of the limelight. Interviews with her are a great opportunity to shift the subject from her life to her career. Her personal life has remained out of the tabloids thanks to this strategy, which has helped her keep a sense of normalcy. Lane is intent on furthering her career and developing herself in the future. She remains committed to taking on roles that push her creative boundaries and honor her artistic principles. She aspires to gracefully and honestly traverse the intricacies of celebrity by keeping her privacy and speaking up when needed. Love, heartbreak, and the constant scrutiny of Hollywood have all been part of Diane Lane's extraordinary path. Grace, resilience, and an unshakable sense of self have seen her through a troubled upbringing and an impressive career. A fiercely private woman, Diane has chosen to let her work do the talking in the face of media fascination with her private life and the rumors that have swirled around it. She is an inspiration at 60 years old, proving that one can be strong, independent, and successful by defining one's own path in life. Diane Lane's view on love. Diane Lane's view on love now differs from her childhood selves. Hollywood offers storybook relationships, but she no longer believes in them. The complexity, messiness, and occasional anguish of love are lessons she has learned. However, she has also realized the value of love despite its transient nature. She has stayed loyal to herself through all of her loves and losses, the good and the bad. Diane is concentrating on her joy today. She is happy with her life as a mother, successful in her work, and free to do as she pleases. She has let go of the urge to seek love or to show the world that she is worthy. She has lived her life to the fullest, loving sincerely and losing painfully. That is the most important thing, after all. Diane Lane has been the subject of numerous enquiries over her alleged intimate relationships with men for quite some time. Speculation is sometimes met with her laughter. On other instances, she keeps silent. Maybe her intriguingness stems from the fact that she has never been one to publicly talk about her personal life. However, will further rumors regarding Diane Lane's romantic life surface? Most likely. Reason being, both Hollywood and viewers are constantly interested in finding out more about the making of a film. Diane Lane's skill, attractiveness, and elegance have kept her in the limelight for decades, and we can all agree that they will not fade anytime soon. She never fails to captivate audiences with her heartwarming on-screen antics and jaw-dropping performances, solidifying her status as one of Hollywood's most alluring stars. Do you think she made the right choice staying silent all these years? Let us know in the comments. Hit like if this changed the way you see her. Subscribe for more untold Hollywood revelations, because the next one might just rewrite everything you thought you knew. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay curious.